Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike. And in this sole video, we are looking at a very bizarre story, though, bizarre is quite the understatement.
Next to me is now sitting Prime Mother. In a moment, Manhatshow, who is in Spirit World, will enter her body. Yes.
A man believed he was a prophet and trapped his family in a secluded room in a secluded house for a decade, documenting everything and telling them they were the only people left alive.
And what you believe?
It was a family of ghosts, and that house, it was a house of horrors. But before we get into all of that, please subscribe to see new stories for the dark every single Tuesday. Now, you and I, let's give this insane story, and I really mean that, a go. There's a lonely village in the Netherlands, far from anywhere you ever would have heard of. It's surrounded by farmlands and fields, and in that small village, called Ruinerwold, people, they had their theories. See, on the edge of town, down a dark dirt road with thick trees on either side, lay a farmhouse. No one knew what went on in that farmhouse, though all the locals, they sort of had their own ideas. Drugs, trafficking, a serial killer, perhaps. The house was down this, in the remotest of the remote part of town. It's surrounded by these very tall fences, so there's no way to get in. There was even security cameras at various points around the place, and anytime somebody tried to even get close to it, how's it going, neighbor? This man would come up and immediately send them on their way. It seemed like this was less of a house and more of a fortress. But whether it was to keep people in or keep people out, no one knew. The only thing that the locals did know was that every single morning for the past 9 years, this older man would drive in his little car down that dirt road and he would visit that house every single morning. He wasn't a local. He spoke Dutch with this really heavy accent. Nobody knew anything about him, much less even his name, and he seemed very content to keep it that way. But what was really going on in that house would not only shock the locals, it would shock the country. The horrifying secret would only be revealed, strangely enough, in a small bar in the town of Ruinerwold called Eat Café de Kastelein. You can stop in there for a beer and a bite. And late one Sunday in 2019, the bartender working there, named Chris, well, he was pushing away chairs, wiping down tables as it was almost closing time. On Sundays, the bar closes at 1 AM, and it was quickly approaching that hour. It's generally pretty quiet around then, as you can imagine. Folks, up early for work the following Monday morning, and so as he was getting ready to start closing up the place, there was only a handful of people in the quieter corners of the bar, and even they were starting to finish off their last drinks, put on their coats for the dark October night it was outside. So Chris was kind of surprised when he heard the door open and the cold wind blow in. I mean, who'd be walking into the bar at this hour just as they're getting ready to close up? Chris saw this man walk in and march straight for the bar, and Chris was wary immediately of whoever this lad was. He had to stop himself from saying, "Oh, bar is closing," because he just had a really weird feeling about whoever this man was. He immediately put you on edge. There was something off, seriously off about whoever this guy was. This is a quiet town, essentially in the middle of nowhere. Every person who is not a regular sticks out. But this guy was more than that. He was in his mid-20s, youthful face, though it was hard to say, sickly pale, bearded, long blonde hair, and he looked like he hadn't showered in weeks. He had this sort of confused expression on his face, like he was having some kind of inner turmoil, as if he was trying to formulate the words of what it is he wanted to say. Thing was, Chris had actually seen this guy outside the bar before, about a week earlier, out the window just staring in. He hadn't come in, but now I guess he had a change of heart. So the guy marched in, went to the bar and ordered a beer, and then he drank it, like he was on the clock, down to almost in one. Then he says, "Thank you," in Dutch. "Give me another, keep him coming, keep him coming." Drank it, down, drank it, down. He drank 5 beers. in the space of about 10 minutes. The entire time saying nothing to Chris, the bartender, nor anybody else in there. He then finished his 5th drink, stood there, once again was looking like sort of lost and confused. He was then finally able to formulate words, and what he said would push Chris over the edge his appearance had put him on. He said he had run away and that he needed help. He said his name was Israel, and his father, Garrett, had kept him and 5 of his siblings hidden in this secret room in this secluded house for almost 10 years. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. Please, my family is probably already looking for me. That was not exactly the words, Chris was expecting to come out of his mouth. So he was kind of a little bit stunned. It's not something you hear every day, I'll give him that. And so he was, oh geez. And the thing was, he looked like somebody who had been kept in a secret room in a secret house for years. He looked like he hadn't showered in a long ass time. The only thing to do, Chris thought, call the police. It took the authorities some time to arrive that dark autumn night, and when they did, in the witching hour, they listened to what Israel had to say, sitting in a seat at the bar, a stunned Chris standing in the corner. At first, they asked for Israel's ID. He didn't have any. They then asked for his full name. Israel Van Dorsten was the answer. They entered his name into their database. Nothing. Clackety clackety, computer says no. Computer says nothing. Nothing is coming up. You are not listed on any register in the entire country of the Netherlands. According to our government database of citizens of, the state, you don't exist. By all accounts, he was a ghost. He was not a person. And that was the God's honest truth. Israel didn't exist. He'd been kept in that bunker, in bunkers, multiple, his entire life. The story he told, and the story that would come out over the following weeks and months, pretty batshit. Yeah. And before we continue, this story is all about this secret family in a secret room in a secret house. Doesn't get much more secret than that. What if you too wanted to remain secret? Well, you can with today's sponsor, NordVPN. Nord ensures that nobody can trace your IP address, which is tracked every time you use the internet on your computer, on your phone, and your IP address is linked to your physical location. Nord can hide your physical location by routing your IP address through some other location. Where? Wherever you want it to be. You want to be in Brazil, Australia, Japan? You can be. Digitally, they haven't invented teleportation, that I'm aware of. It also means that you can access content that is only available in certain locations, like certain news websites, TV shows, voila. NordVPN is the absolute best in the business. It's the most reliable and it's the safest, but a VPN isn't the only thing that Nord can do for you. The best of NordVPN doesn't just stop there. Nord also has incredible features like Nord's MeshNet, where you can safely connect to any other device in the world. Tired of remembering passwords? Get yourself a password manager. Or how about a data scanner? Or a dark web monitor that gives you alerts if your credentials have been leaked. And you also have Nord's threat protection that blocks nefarious websites and ads, it scans files, and it stops trackers in their tracks. Nord's goal is, and it's always been, to make the internet better than it is today and safer, free from things like online threats, surveillance, and censorship. And frankly, that's 3 things I just won't have. So become safer with a click by downloading NordVPN today. And if you use my special link, that is nordvpn.com/thatchapter, you can get an exclusive deal. Get a NordVPN 2-year plan and you get 4 months extra, all right here at nordvpn.com/thatchapter. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Once again, go to nordvpn.com/thatchapter to get a 2-year plan and you'll get 4 extra months, all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Thank you so much to NordVPN for sponsoring and supporting That Chapter. Now let's get back to it. Israel was born on January 31st, 1994, the 4th child to Garrett Van Dorsten and his wife, Hae-Jin Moon. He was a home birth. It was extremely difficult for his mother, Hae-Jin. She almost died during it, and Garrett refused to call a doctor. Israel was their first child to not be registered, and the family moved around quite a bit during those early years. Together, Garrett and Hae-Jin would have 9 children, the majority of them, according to the government, not existing on paper. See how Garrett Van Dorsten and Hei Jin Moon met? Well, that was basically the start of this long, crazy train that just began in interest in spirituality and religion. Stop. Platform number 1, and then it ended in platform number 1,000,000, which is a cult house of horrors. Garrett Van Dorsten would post frequently on social media. The house, the secret, the cult, he didn't really post much about that. Under the name John Eagles, he was spreading the word, talking of faith and religion and exercise, quite frankly, he was big into that. Garrett Van Dorsten grew up in the Netherlands and had been married before Hei Jin, but had left his first wife and joined the Unification Church. This was in the late 80s. Now, the Unification Church is pretty interesting. It's a derivative of Christianity, though the name Moonies might also be how you may have heard of them. It began in Seoul, South Korea, by Sung Myung Moon, hence Moonies, and Sung Myung believed he was the second coming of Jesus. Look at you. One of the core traditions of the Unification Church is these mass wedding ceremonies. And when I say mass, I mean thousands of people getting married at the very same time. Maybe not the best idea for you bridezillas out there. Happiest day of his life. And it was at one of these mass wedding ceremonies that Garrett, he met and married an Italian woman, though I don't think he had much choice in who he was marrying, and their marriage lasted less time than it took for me to just tell you about it. Then in the 80s, he met another woman, his third wife, Hei Jin Moon. Now, as you probably have guessed, Hei Jin Moon was not her birth name. In fact, not really much is known about her. She was born and raised in Austria under a different name, moved to Korea, and became a member of the church. And then while she was in Korea as a member of the church, well, see, didn't the spirit of a South Korean woman enter her body and just took over her physical being? As you do. So now, this Austrian woman, who nobody knows her actual Austrian name, became Hei Jin Moon. That's how she got the name. In fact, the name Hei Jin Moon, it's believed that it was one of Sung Myung Moon's, the leader at the time of the church. He had a daughter that passed away as a baby, so, well, she just kind of well, that's me now, I guess. Folks, we are still in the normal part of this story. At time, Hei Jin's spirit, the real Hei Jin who passed away, would enter her body, and her and Garrett would have these conversations for days it could last. Garrett was a true believer in spirits entering your body, and you becoming someone else for minutes or days at a time.
Next to me is now sitting Prime Mother, but in a moment, the attendant Manhatsho, who is in Spirit World, will enter her body, and then I will speak with Manhatsho. So please, Manhatsho, can you come in Prime Mother's body? Hello, Manhatsho? You hear me?
Yes, yes.
Strange things going on, eh?
Yes. Yes, I don't understand it. Something new.
Yes.
Yes. New is going on.
I mean, that's pretty funny. But this will get dark. So Garrett and Hei Jin would move back to the Netherlands, and they lived in small towns here and there, the family growing one child at a time. The first 3 children, Shin, Marianne, and Adino, were sorta normal, as in they went to school, socialized, were registered on birth records, though the 3 oldest children were always taught, warned might be a better way, at a very young age, to never speak about their younger siblings, who were not registered on any records.
Jongens, vandaag is het de 28ste van de 10 maand, ja 9999. En ik wil jullie nog wat uitleggen waarom je op school niet over Israël en mag praten. God die heeft tegen papa gezegd dat papa nu over dit onderwerp tegen jullie moet praten. Om je dat uit te leggen. Maar als papa nou niet met God zou praten, dan kon God dat ook niet tegen papa zeggen. Eigenlijk zou God helemaal niet willen dat jullie op zo'n school zaten. Maar omdat de mensen denken dat het zo moet, dan verplichten ze dat alle kinderen naar school gaan. Maar Israël en hebben papa en mama een foefje mee uitgehaald en die hoeven straks niet naar school. Die hoeven alleen maar op Godschool. Maar omdat jullie naar deze school gaan, hoeven Israël en dat niet meer. Met jullie konden papa en mama dat nog niet doen. Ja? Best is gewoon maar er helemaal niet over te praten en maar net te doen op school alsof Israël en er helemaal niet zijn. Ja? Dat is het beste. Je moet er helemaal niks over zeggen. Edino, snap je dat wel? Moet je niks over zeggen. Ja? Dat is ons geheimpje. Hè? Wij hebben samen een geheimpje met God. We hebben samen een geheimpje. En dat mag niemand weten. Ja? Daar mag je nooit wat over verklappen. Want anders dan stoppen ze papa misschien wel in de gevangenis anders. Nou, dat wil je toch helemaal niet.
Garrett would say if you speak about these kids, questions might be asked by teachers, why aren't your younger kids in school? They're not on any records. And so he would say, well, if you talk about your younger kids, you talk about this secret, Daddy's gonna go to jail. And you won't like that very much. That was the reason Garrett didn't want any of his kids registered. Because if they were registered and then, they didn't end up going to school, social services would be called and all of that sort of stuff. And Garrett had his own little plan for his kids and for the future. Really for us all, folks, for humanity as a whole. See, in the Unification Church, the leader believed himself to be Messiah reborn. But Garrett Van Dorsten says, well, maybe I could be the Messiah reborn. Have you thought about that? So he had his little Van Dorsten clan, where he was the leader, and they were going to create this utopia. Someday. I mean, start off in the bunker, start small. If he can control the bunker, he can control the world. Everybody would die. The world there would be an apocalypse, and himself and his kids and any other believers out there would inherit it. They would start their own country. You better conform. His kids would be, leaders of this new country, and yep, it's as crazy as it sounds.
So in Eden we have complete justice. Now, I want to specify, I want to narrow down this question to that of individual responsibility and individual faith. So, you are you, and you have a responsibility. And complete justice in Eden means that justice is done to you. So, when you know what to do, then you are responsible to do what you have to do.
Garrett would record hundreds of videos over the years, trying to explain what it was he believed and what he thought was going to happen. See, Garrett was certainly the head of the household, known as the prime father. Hey Jin, caring mother. Sort of. Rarely speaking up, but when she did, you would listen to what she had to say. She was like the strong, silent type in this entire family environment. And, you'll see some clips of her that might make you think she wasn't great. They would move around frequently, living at one point in a town called Haslet. And there, Garrett found a like-minded soul named Joseph Brunner, an Austrian, a fellow Mooney. They would in fact become so close as next-door neighbours that they would demolish the walls between their houses and their gardens and basically just have this one big house for them all to live in. Now, not much is known about Joseph Brunner, there's no even pictures of him available, but neighbours during this time would say he was a real kind of a bastard. Like, he was a real grumpy bitch. Never said hello to anybody, just seemed like he was in a bad mood all the time. No wife, no girlfriend, no partner, no nothing. Seemed to just kind of stick to himself, but he was known as a very skilled carpenter. And so, that's why Garrett Van Dorsten was like, here, listen, you're my little sidekick from here on out. You're my little lackey. You can build shit for this utopia. Great. As years went by, as Garrett expanded his cinematic cult universe with these vlogs and videos, his insanity only grew and grew, as did his cruelty towards his own children. Garrett had a dark side to him, a side to him he was freely allowed to access under the guise of his cult, and he could indulge in his worst desires of beatings, cruelty, abuse, and ultimate control over those around him, to not even allow them to see the sun. The children kept in these makeshift rooms would not be allowed out for months at a time, kept in these rundown homes in sleeping bags at all times.
So children, today it is the 16th of September, the year 2003. And today we are starting with something new. This new is called Teaching for Children.
What started out Garrett, though, on this long path to insanity is kind of really not known. It was really, he joined the Unification Church in the Netherlands with his brother. In the early 80s, his parents were very much against them joining up, but he did anyway. He joined, went to ceremonies in the Netherlands and then in Germany, and then eventually went over to Korea. But that was it. Garrett, over time, believed that only he and his immediate family were the right ones. Everybody outside was wrong. Everybody outside was corrupt, evil, gonna die. Except that the oldest children, for example, Shin, Marianne, and Adino, the ones who went to school, who interacted with the outside world, because the other 6 children they would have were the ones who didn't see the outside world. They were the ones nobody knew even existed. They were the ones kept in bunkers their entire life. But the reason was, Garrett believed his older children who were socialized were evil and corrupted. For example, he would keep one of his children, Adino, in a dog cage for a year. Marianne, another one of the oldest, he beat and strangled so bad she was knocked out for 3 days. When he came to, he was proud of her. He had beat the devil out of her. He hated his oldest children. He would say to their faces he wished he could kill them. But as they were the children the government was aware of, they'd be missed if they didn't attend school. He told them not even to make eye contact with the others, in case their evil eyes corrupt them. Their world was an evil place, and only Garrett could make it right. And you, listen, you specifically, you better, stick close to him. You know what? Or else, something. He would build new rooms in the houses. He would subdivide them with the help of Joseph, the handyman carpenter, of course. He would isolate his oldest children. He would isolate his children willy-nilly and just build these little compounds inside of houses that were just totally blocked off from the outside. He was basically caging up every single person, and then it was daily prayers, daily lectures, daily beatings, daily horrors.
Ik herken de geur gewoon nog. En jij? Zo. Zorg voor me ben. Ik kan niet geloven dat dit ook dit bent. Wat is hier? Wat is... Alles in elkaar gestoord.
Beatings, humiliations, all of it was pretty continuous for everyone, only getting worse over time. The horrors in that house increasing daily, while Heijin just sorta stood by.
Come! Come close to me! Do you dare to do it?
No.
Huh?
You come with this chair. So. You go sit in there and sit there on. Now, Israel, on the chair. On the chair. On the chair. Go then sitting on her chair. No, he doesn't want to do it. I show you. Go away.
Child of God, liebes Kind.
I'm cutting away here because you don't want to see what he does. He pushes his young daughter very violently out of the chair.
I want to serve. I want to serve.
Heijin just there, kind of smiling as her 2 or 3-year-old daughter is. Yeah, it's pretty sickening.
Did it hurt? Or not?
You can sit next to me.
This was only a game, okay?
At one point, Heijin had attempted to run away, but she was dragged back by Garrett, of course, kicking and screaming. One of the reasons, though, she may have stayed so close was that Heijin herself was, in fact, slowly dying. She seemed to be getting sicker and sicker over time, and nobody knew what. Nobody knew why Heijin was ill, but every day she'd be weaker than the last. But, you know, big dog, go to the doctor? Go to the hospital? You must be joking. Not in Garrett Van Dorsen's. You pray harder. Have you tried praying harder yet? You're clearly not praying hard enough. And then, when in 2004 Heijin Moon passed away of cancer, of colon cancer, Garrett said to the kids, she just didn't have enough faith. And the insanity and horrors in the house continued.
But my brother, it's only on image. Image. Maybe this image is wrong. Maybe I'm not such an idiot. Maybe I'm just normal. Maybe my image of an idiot comes from some idiotic people. Anyway, I believe in the future because it comes from God. And what you believe, that's your shit. Bye-bye.
So he would do this with Heijin, you know, a spirit entering her body. And then he did do it with the older children too. He's a big believer in the whole spirit entering your body shenanigans. And the older children, as they grew older, I mean, they sort of knew, bit of a farce, you know, it's a bit of a game. But of course you got to play along with it, otherwise you're going to get a knuckle sandwich. It was just easier to go along with it, because of course if you denied it, you were evil. You were corrupt, you'd get punished. You could be sleeping outside in the dog kennel for a year. Thing was though, when Mom, Heijin Moon, passed away, her spirit kind of decided to stick around a little bit. It entered the body of Adino, one of the older boys, and so he had to act like his dead mom. He was 12 at the time, and at first it would be for a few hours, then longer and longer. And Garrett really treated his son like his wife. Adino knew what was happening, but he still had to act like his dead mom. And the other children, you know, the 8 other kids would have to treat Adino like he was their mom. The exact same way, or else Garrett would get furious because his beliefs were not, you know, they weren't acting as his beliefs. So Adino would have to dress like mom, wear mom's perfumes, all that kind of thing, cook for everybody, take care of them all. It's all incredibly disturbing and messed up. But of course, the most disturbing thing was he treated his son, his 12-year-old son, like his wife, in the way that husbands would act with their wives. You know what I mean. Adino wasn't the only one. His daughter, he also treated like his wife when his wife passed away, saying, well, her spirit is in you, so it's her. Yeah. And this led the family to the lonely farmhouse close to Ruinerwold. Loyal dog Joseph Bruner, of course, joining them. But by this time, the 2 oldest kids had escaped. Marianne in 2008 and Shin the following year. They simply snuck out of the home one night and never looked back. Adino himself fled in 2010. In the farm in Ruinerwold, it was their most isolated place yet. The kids were truly told the outside world was evil, and that they in fact were the only people left alive. None were allowed outside the fence that went around the home, and no one came knocking. The 3 children who had fled were the only registered people. Garrett himself had actually deregistered as a citizen of the Netherlands, so the government didn't even know he was there, and none of the remaining children existed on paper. And this farmhouse was rented by Joseph Bruner, so even the owners of the farmhouse they were living in, nobody knew what was happening. This was all off the record. The family didn't even really live in the farmhouse proper. They lived in this secret bunker that was sort of like to the side and beneath the farmhouse, to get in there, it was the entrance to where they lived was a secret door behind a cupboard. See, one of the deals that Joseph Ruiner made with the owners of this farmhouse in Ruinerwold was that it was owned by this couple who owned like lots of property. This farmhouse was sort of decrepit, falling apart. So Joseph said, all right, you give me a cheap rent. You give me a good deal on this place and I'll fix it up for you. And he made a lot of alterations to that house that the owners were unaware of, including building a secret attachment door hidden behind a cupboard. So you'd open this secret door and you'd be in this like pitch black corridor that was sort of like a maze running through this newly constructed part of the house. Following that through the darkness, you would eventually end up in this little damp room. Just the couch and hay bales there as furniture. And they all slept in there in these little sleeping bags. Only person allowed to leave was Garrett. The kids were rarely allowed outside except for whatever task Garrett had them do. Exercise was the only one he seemed to make a priority. And Joseph would come every morning and drop off food or whatever supplies they needed. It was a house of horrors, though house of horrors in a secret bunker of horrors might be more appropriate. Beatings, humiliation, ice cold baths till they literally couldn't speak anymore. All of it was daily, every day. Like, for example, one thing he would do was hit them with this invisible sword, which he said, if I hit you with this sword, if you've been bad, corrupted, it'll kill you. So he would swing the sword at the kids and they would have to throw themselves on the ground and pretend to be unconscious. And then they'd wake up a little bit while later and say, oh, well, I'm clearly one of the good ones because I'm not dead. And it would turn out that his children weren't the only prisoners Garrett kept. Years before, in another house in the Netherlands, he'd kept Hajin's father and her son from a previous marriage. He kept them locked in the attic. They had their own rules. The third rule being the most important. Prisoners have one major task: to prepare themselves for receiving evil tribe therapy, which is needed for them to separate them from evil, and so to prepare them for regaining their relationship to God. Garrett would receive money from Hajin's first husband, the boy's father, as he too was fully invested in Garrett being the Messiah. Eventually, they both would be returned to Austria, likely when Garrett and company continued moving. Hajin's father passed away. No one knows what became of her son. And for 9 years, they lived in the basement in that house in Ruinerwold, waiting for the end of time. And slowly, over time, Israel, who was now the oldest remaining child, he began to poke holes in the shroud their father had covered them in. But he rarely saw the outside world, and just as he got older, he was more curious about it. He knew the outside world existed because his 3 older siblings had all escaped. They had all booked it. So where did they go? There was a computer in the home. A computer which, of course, Garrett was only allowed to use. Israel, in the dark of the night, would slowly start to use that computer himself. Garrett, while living in Ruinerwold, would actually suffer a stroke and become bedbound, which is kind of ironic when he said that his wife had died because she didn't believe hard enough. I guess he didn't believe hard enough either. But none of the kids dared leave, even though the Messiah couldn't stop them. They were each other's jailers. They were each other's prisoners now at this point. Garrett made Israel the man of the house. He was the one who had to deal with Joseph, had to just manage things, around the home. Deal with Joseph when he brings supplies and so forth. By the way, Joseph was never paid for any of this. He just did it because he was a true believer. Hard to get good true believers these days, isn't it? Throughout all of this, Garrett continued posting on socials. He had his little websites, which are still up today if you can believe that, like the Eagle Rock Wiki, where he, as always, posted as his pseudonym, John Eagles. As for Israel, now having some degree of freedom, he finally managed to actually get himself a smart phone. His dad, Garrett, had sent him out to town to get some special supplies one day, and he snuck himself a little phone. He began to see more and more about what was really going on in the outside world. And so finally Israel thought, you know what, it's time to actually get out there. It's time to finally escape his father. See the world he'd been told didn't exist. And so finally one night he did just that. In the darkness of the night, he crept silently out of his house. At this point, Garrett was bedridden, so his younger siblings were his jailers. They were the ones he needed to be scared of in case he alerted them. But he managed to get out, and he started towards the closest town, Ruinerwold. As he got closer and closer, he heard music, he saw lights, he saw the bar, Eat Café de Castelline. He didn't dare go in, so he simply stood outside a while, watching the people inside, laughing, having a good time. Having a good time in a world he'd been told didn't exist anymore. And he returned back to the farm. He presumed nobody knew he had escaped and seen things, that night. And so about a week passed. Israel thought, whew, got away with that one. Until Garrett, lying on a mattress in the middle of this little bunker, beckoned him over one day, about a week after he first went on a little escapade. And Garrett said, "What's in your pocket?" Garrett, though bedbound, eyes like an eagle, he saw every single thing that went on. And though he couldn't move, he still had his daily lectures, his daily this, his daily that. If he couldn't beat you, he'd get somebody else to beat you. So this time he asked Israel, "What's in your pocket? What do you keep hiding in your pocket?" It was Israel's phone. Israel thought about hiding the phone away, denying it existed. He said it seemed useless, so he just admitted to his dad that, yeah, he had a phone. He was curious about the outside world, brought his phone in, gave it to his dad. His dad, Garrett, simply nodded. He knew the punishment. 3 days, sleeping outside, no food. And that was when Israel said, "I need to get out of here for good." Once again, as darkness fell, he crept out of the house and made it to Ruinerwold. This time, he walked in and he asked for help. The police arrived. He told them not everything I told, but most of what I just told you. The parts he knew anyway. And the police were baffled, to say the least. And as he didn't exist on the system, they had no way of verifying who he was, much less his story. And so, they said, "Well, we gotta take you back to your farm, so..." Which was, of course, the last thing in the world Israel wanted. They were gonna take... Where else are they gonna do? What else are they gonna do with you? They said, "Alright, pop in the police car. Take you back to the farm." Israel began shitting himself. We'll look into this whole farm, family, cult, bunker, whole dealio, but you know what? We'll do it in the morning, because it's getting pretty late. So, we'll check all that stuff out in the morning. So they literally just dropped Israel outside the farm. That was it. They didn't even knock on the door. They said, "Alright, here you go. Here you are. Home at last. Home sweet home. The place you were just telling us you had escaped from. That's kind of weird. Okay. But not our problem. At least not right now. Listen, their shift was about to end. Mrs. is waiting for me." So Israel was outside the farmhouse now, alone, being sort of brought back against his will to the cult. He just stood outside there, and he could see in the windows of the farmhouse flashlights moving around. They were looking for him. Israel would say he stood outside there, sat on the grass outside the farm for about an hour, not knowing what to do. He couldn't go back. He had tried to escape, and they had brought him back. So where the hell else is he supposed to go? He doesn't even know the outside world, how it works, much less who'd ask for help. The people, you think he would ask for help, well, they weren't much use. He ended up walking to another town, as Ruinerwold ended up being a fucking waste of time. So he ended up walking to another town and just wanted to sleep. He ended up going to a bus bench, just lay down there and slept. Then at about 8 a.m., passing by police officer, "Can't be at that. What you doing sleeping here? You can't be at that." Israel told him, again, the story he had already told about running away from the cult. The police officer said, "One of my co-workers just told me about a report he wrote up about what you're saying. Let's go." He was then taken to the station and the entire real story tumbled out. His older siblings, who he hadn't seen in years, in over a decade in some of their cases, they heard they finally came. They would say they had tried to go back to visit the family multiple times, but they just were never able to get through to any of them. They tried to, help their younger siblings, but it just never worked. And they believed as well that if they went and rescued their younger siblings who were still kept in the bunker, weirdly enough, they didn't want to do it because they thought that their younger siblings might hate them if they rescued them, because the younger siblings were so indoctrinated in their father's beliefs, they didn't want to be taken away. The police, they went to the farmhouse, knocked on the door. Joseph swaddles out saying, "What yous doing here?" The police, "Search warrant, buddy." They kicked in the door of the home, and at first they thought a false report, that Israel was talking pure shite, that it was non-existent. They were looking around this entire place. It's empty. Nobody is here. Then they called back to the station saying, "Yeah, the house is empty." "Oh. There's a secret door in here. This is a secret door. behind that cupboard. Take a look in there. They went in there, made their way down to the secret house of horrors, finding 5 frightened children, all of them like sitting on hay, looking at people who must have been like monsters to them from hell, because they thought everybody in the world was dead. And then, of course, lying in a mattress in the center of the room was Garrett Van Dorsten, staring up at the police with glassy eyes, completely gone. Garrett was arrested. As he lay there, Joseph the Austrian, his sidekick, along with him. It was over.
Dutch police have discovered a family who spent nearly a decade hidden away on a remote farm, apparently waiting for the end of time. A father and his 5 adult children were found after his eldest son turned up in a local town. The children were aged between 18 and 25. None of their births had been registered.
A secluded farmhouse hidden away behind trees and bushes. No one was really sure who lived here or what went on inside these walls. It was all a mystery until a young man walked into a local pub, drank 5 beers and asked for help.
Ik zag direct al dat hij een verwarde blik had dan.
I could immediately see he was confused. He had long hair and a dirty beard and dirty old clothes. It didn't make sense.
When police arrived, they found his father and 4 siblings living in a small space in the house that could be locked, and it wasn't known if they were there voluntarily. They'd been there, apparently alone, for years, surviving on homegrown vegetables and livestock. It's not clear if any of the children had ever gone to school or even knew that other people existed.
When this all came out, police actually thought Joseph was the cult leader and that he had locked the family away. But it seems like he was more under Garrett's thumb, probably wishing he could be in there with them. Tens of thousands of euros were found inside the home, and Garrett would ultimately be charged with deprivation of liberty, money laundering, and when the older children came forward about what had happened over the years, he would also be charged with multiple counts of sexual abuse. The money laundering, by the way, I'm not sure. I don't know exactly how he got the money to pay for these houses and so forth. The one in Ruinerwold was rented, where he found the cash to pay. Who knows? But when the police made it in, they found a lot of money in there. Later reported to be over 100,000 euros, which is approximately the same amount in dollars. And the thing was, the oldest children, the 4 oldest, the 3 who had escaped, and Israel, they all wanted Garrett charged with everything, including the sexual abuse, of course. They wanted him charged with all of the crimes he had committed against them all. The younger 5 children who had stayed, they said no, don't charge him. He's the Messiah. You can't charge him with anything. He's our hero. They would say he's innocent, never hurt a fly. All those accusations they are saying he did, it's bullshit. In the end, the charges against Garrett would actually be terminated due to his medical condition. They felt he was in such poor health, there wasn't much more they could do to him, I guess. By this point, it seems he was gone in the head. Garrett Van Dorsten is currently 73 years of age, still living in the Netherlands. Some of his children still live with him. Joseph Brunner was sentenced to 3 years in prison in 2022, minus the time already served, so he is out already himself. Likely still with Garrett. And the oldest children are trying to live the best life they possibly can to this day. And Shinee, folks, that is the story of the ghost family, the House of Horrors in Ruinerwold. It's messed up. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. It really means a lot to me that you're here. This was an insane story which I just kind of stumbled across about the secret family kept in a secret room in this House of Horrors. It was so incredibly messed up, I had to tell you. But by the way, if you want to learn more about this story, there's an amazing Dutch documentary called Children of the Ruinerwold, which you can find. It actually follows the children, the older children after they've, escaped. Israel follows him around, in the weeks after. Very, very interesting to hear their points of view on it all. The BBC did a dubbing of it, so it's easy enough to find. But, or subtitled it. So go check it out. But also check out the That Chapter podcast, which has a brand new episode out every single Monday. Recently we talked about Karl Panzram, Alain Leger, the Hex Hollow murder, and more. So please give them a go. But until the next one every Tuesday, folks. Until then, please take care of each other and please take care of yourself. Because I love you. Mike out.